She practically ran into the car, panting, her eyes wide and her voice trembling. She slammed the door and said something that still echoes in my head. "Don't stop driving. No matter what happens." At the time, I thought she was running away from someone, but I didn't know if it was an abusive ex, a crime, or something even worse. All I know is that, seconds later, I started noticing the black car, with its low beams, appearing in the rearview mirror, and it wouldn't disappear, no matter how many turns I made. The woman just kept repeating, "Keep going. Please, don't stop." My heart raced. I didn't know whether to accelerate further, stop and face whatever was coming, or take someone in danger straight home. What happened that night completely changed the way I see my passengers. And the craziest part? I only understood everything when that car pulled up alongside mine. Before continuing, leave a like if you enjoy real stories full of tension and mystery. Subscribe to the channel because the ending of this one, you won't believe it. And seriously, it's worth watching until the end. It was a typical evening in Austin, Texas. I'd finished dinner, grabbed my coffee, and headed back to the car, ready for a few more hours on the app. The weather was pleasant, neither too hot nor too cold, and the city seemed peaceful. It was a little after 10 p.m., a time when rush hour is usually predictable. People returning from work, some heading to meet friends, nothing out of the ordinary. I was going about my usual pace, listening to low music and enjoying the calm. That night, my mood was light. I'd already had some good runs and my goal for the day was almost met. My plan was to finish with 2 or 3 more trips and then head home. The app showed that demand wasn't high, but rides were still coming in at a good rate. I parked near a gas station, checking my phone, when the notification sounded through the car. Another ride. The pickup destination was about 7 minutes away, in an area I knew well. From the map, it looked residential, but isolated with poor lighting. I checked the passenger's profile and noticed there was no photo, just a generic name and no reviews. This wasn't unusual, but it always raised a tinge of suspicion. I took a deep breath and accepted the ride. As the GPS recalculated the route, I thought about how these nighttime runs could be a real treat. Part of me liked it, after all. It's at these times that the most unexpected stories happen. And without knowing it, I was about to experience one of the strangest and most intense experiences of my entire driving career. With my hands firmly on the steering wheel, I headed towards the meeting point, without imagining that in a few minutes my heart would race faster than the car engine. The GPS led me to a narrow street lined with simple houses and a few streetlights. It was the kind of place where darkness fills every space between the streetlights, and any movement seems more intense than it actually is. I slowed down and looked around, searching for the number indicated on the app. There was no sign of anyone in sight. I stopped the car and let the headlights illuminate the street a little more. After a few seconds, I saw a figure emerge from the darkest corner, walking quickly. She was wearing a thick coat, the hood covering part of her face, and she was holding a small bag close to her body, as if it were something precious or fragile. Even from a distance, her breathing was rapid. She glanced back every 2 steps, as if to ensure she wasn't being followed. As she approached the car, she hesitated for a moment before opening the door, as if gathering her courage. On the app, her name appeared as K. Monroe and her final destination was on the other side of town, with no additional details. I didn't know it yet, but that ride would be anything but ordinary. And that restless look in her eyes already made it clear that my peaceful evening was over. As soon as she got into the car, I noticed how out of breath she was. It wasn't just the exhaustion of running a few meters. There was something deeper, a nervousness that showed in every gesture. She closed the door quickly, almost forcefully, and immediately looked out the rear window, as if needing confirmation that she was safe. "Please, just start driving," she said, her voice trembling. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her hands clutching her purse so tightly that her fingers looked white. Uncomprehending, I asked if she was okay, but she just repeated more firmly, "Don't stop. No matter what happens." There was something in the way she said it that made me obey without much question. I put the car in gear and followed the GPS, but without the same relaxedness as before. The silence inside the car was uncomfortable, heavy. I could sense she was on high alert, as if something was going to happen at any moment. I tried to lighten the mood by asking if she wanted me to put on some music, but the answer came quickly and almost sharply. Better not. I glanced in the rearview mirror again. His eyes were constantly moving, now to the side, now back, as if tracking every shadow that passed by the window. And that's when I noticed a pair of headlights, keeping exactly the same distance as us, since the moment we'd exited that dark street. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. At night, especially in less crowded areas, it's common for a car to follow the same route for a few blocks. But as we continued, I realized that the vehicle behind us wasn't just heading in the same direction, it was following us. Every time I changed lanes, he changed lanes too. When I slowed down, he did the same. Even through the most unexpected curves, he stayed close. The passenger noticed me looking in the rearview mirror and discreetly turned to check. It took only a second for her to shrink back into her seat and mutter something barely audible. They found us. My stomach sank. I asked who they were, but she shook her head, as if explaining was too dangerous. She urged me to speed up, but without drawing attention to myself. My palms began to sweat on the steering wheel. With each light that turned yellow, I had to decide whether to risk moving forward or stop and give the car behind me a chance to catch up. The streets seemed narrower, and each turn revealed only more darkness. That's when I noticed something that made me even more uneasy. The car behind me wasn't trying to overtake, wasn't signaling anything. It just maintained the same distance, like a patient predator waiting for the right moment to attack. As we drove through the nearly deserted streets, that presence in the rearview mirror became impossible to ignore. The low beams discreetly illuminated the asphalt behind us, as if the driver wanted to go unnoticed, but never too far. Every time I turned unexpectedly, he turned too. If I accelerated a little, he followed suit. There were no horns, no passing signals, just that silent, constant, suffocating insistence. The passenger, never taking her eyes off the rear window, clutched her purse to her chest as if it were a shield. When our eyes met in the rearview mirror, she shook her head slowly, almost imperceptibly, and murmured, "It's him." My stomach churned. I didn't know who he was, but the way she said it put my entire body on alert. I wasn't just driving anymore. I was being hunted. At every turn, the feeling of being cornered grew. I mentally weighed my options: follow the GPS route and hope it would end quickly, or change course and try to evade the situation. I considered going straight to the police station, but the passenger reacted immediately when I suggested it. She firmly said no, as if simply getting close put her in even more danger. Her breathing was rapid, and her hands trembled as they clutched her purse. The car behind me seemed to read my every move, carefully adjusting itself to never get too far away. The silence in the car was broken only by the sound of the engine and my own heartbeat in my ear. I glanced at my phone for a moment, considering calling the police, but hesitated. I didn't have enough information, I didn't know what was happening, and something told me any rash move could make the situation worse. The passenger glanced at me quickly, as if she wanted to say more, but fear kept her silent. The city, which normally seemed full of light and movement, that night seemed like a maze of shadows and empty streets, each one leading us deeper, farther from any safe place. It was when the car behind me suddenly accelerated that my entire body went into overdrive. In the rearview mirror, I saw the headlights approaching fast, the space between us shrinking by the second. The passenger shrank back in her seat, as if trying to disappear. Her eyes were fixed on the window, but I could see the terror etched on her face. I gripped the steering wheel tightly and decided to change course abruptly, turning right onto a narrower, poorly lit street. The sound of tires screeching on the asphalt echoed loudly in the silent dawn. I glanced again in the rearview mirror and saw that the car had made the same turn without hesitation. The weight of the pursuit seemed to push my car forward, as if the other vehicle was trying to force us to react. Each second dragged by, and my heart pounded so hard it felt like it was trying to leap out of my throat. The passenger began muttering rapid words, almost like a prayer, begging me to keep going and not stop for anything. The pressure was so much that, for a moment, I thought it would be best to pull over and face whatever came, but something inside me told me that if I did that, the situation would get completely out of my control. Just when I thought the chase was about to reach its worst, the car accelerated until it was side by side with us. My body braced for impact or something even more serious, but instead, I saw the car window slowly roll down. In the passenger seat, a man held a professional camera, pointed directly at me and the passenger. Behind him, another person with a boom microphone was almost peering through the window. For a moment, I was at a loss. My brain tried to reconcile the fear I'd felt up until that point with the absurd scene before my eyes. The passenger, previously tense and cowering, relaxed and let out a nervous laugh, as if she could finally breathe. She looked at me and told me it was all part of a test for an independent film, a real reaction recording for a chase scene. The car behind was the production crew, who wanted to capture my genuine reaction to thinking we were being followed. I felt a mixture of anger and relief. Anger at having been so thoroughly deceived, and relief at knowing none of it was real. As they walked away, waving and thanking me, I was left with the strange feeling that I had experienced one of the most tense moments of my life, only to discover that, in the end, it was all just a cinematic experiment. I drove for the next few minutes in silence, trying to process what had just happened. My heart was still racing and my breathing heavy, as if my body hadn't yet grasped that the danger had passed. Part of me wanted to laugh it off. After all, it was just a performance. But another part was outraged that they'd put me in the middle of a game without warning. I thought about how dangerous the line between reality and fiction can be, especially when it involves someone's real fear. During those minutes, I wasn't just a ride-hailing driver. I was someone trying to protect a passenger who believed she was in danger. And that left a lasting impression on me. If I ever encounter that film crew again, I don't know whether to thank them for the unique experience or demand a formal apology. In the end, the ride ended without any further surprises, but the lesson remained. What seems like a threat isn't always true, and not all tranquility guarantees that nothing will happen. Now I want to know from you, would you have been angry at being tricked, or would you have laughed it off? Leave your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the channel to follow more real stories that, like this one, prove that life is much more unpredictable than any movie script. If this story has you hooked so far, leave a like now to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Hit the bell to receive the next stories full of tension, mystery, and twists you won't believe until you hear them.